Hello and welcome to Text English Grade 3 Quick Guide. So far we've covered, we've covered the 4 text types and the 4 sentence types. We've covered main idea and theme. What else do we need to know about? This is an interesting one. How do you locate the main idea in the 4 different text types or essay types? Is there a different technique for each one? Good question. Okay, so let's start with the descriptive text. Non-fiction, but painting a picture. Tons of detail, no opinion. Okay, so the interesting thing about this one is mood can be part of the main idea because it's so focused on sensory details. Remember, the dry version of the essay is expository, and the one that's rich in evoking the 5 senses and creating a sense of mood is descriptive. So when you look for the main idea in a descriptive text or essay, you want to include the mood. How do you do that? Okay, how about this? An essay about the joy of activities on the beach. The joy of it. The expository main idea for that would just be an essay about activities at the beach. How about an expository essay on the problem of ocean pollution? What about the descriptive version? An essay about the worrisome problem of ocean pollution. It's going to worry you. It's worrisome. Now, is that an opinion, though? That's a good question. If a descriptive essay is evoking specific emotions, is it telling you how to feel about the subject? Well, yes and no. Ocean pollution is universally considered a bad thing. So if your essay is worrying about ocean pollution, that's not an opinion. That's pretty much considered fact. Ocean pollution is something to worry about, is generally considered fact. How about a poem about the sights and sounds of rainstorms? That's the main idea for a descriptive essay. A poem about the sights and sounds of rainstorms. When you talk about a poem, talk about the mood. Or, well, in this case, the sights and sounds, the senses. What's the mood? Is it sad, joyful, worrisome? Is it talking about sights and sounds or tastes and smells? A poem about the tastes and smells of a wonderful meal. You might have that. Okay, now, we basically covered expository and descriptive together because descriptive is expository with rich detail, evoking the senses, figurative language, and mood. Expository is very, very dry, just the facts. So expository, how do you write the main idea for expository? Topic and the verb-based subtopic, which is answering a question about the topic, maybe. For example, owls and where they live. Or the main idea of a recipe would be how to bake cookies. It's not about cookies, just a noun. It's about how to bake cookies. The process or procedure for baking cookies. The verb bake. No. Here's another one. Supposing you read a news article. What's the main idea in the news article? The news article is about a new water park being built in town. It's mainly about severe weather, and that's happened recently this week, for example. You'll be reading an article about how we've had a lot of flooding and rainstorms, and text. The main idea is a news article about our recent severe weather. What's this essay about? Exams. How to practice for them and what to study. That's the main idea of all this that I've written. Persuasive. Convince me. Okay, so the main idea for this is going to be, what is the author trying to convince you to believe? And if the author's doing it, what is he asking you to do? So there's probably either, I want you to believe this, and there's a call to action, and I want you to do that. I want you to believe that ocean pollution is a major problem, and I want you to go to a local beach and pick up plastic bags and throw them away. Or I want you to write to your local congressman and pass stricter laws about whether people can bring disposable cups onto a beach. Something like that. That could be right there your main idea for the persuasive text. So, in summary, main idea for a persuasive text is, what does the author want you to believe, and what action does the author want you to take, if he talks about action. Narrative. This is really easy because the narrative is usually, telling a story with the setting, characters, problem, solution, and some kind of theme or moral pearl of wisdom or takeaway lesson, which are all anatomy of a story, right? Those are the parts that go into the anatomy of a whole story. Again, I think I've said this before, but it's very, very important. Who are the main characters? What is their problem? And if it's there, what is the solution? That's for the whole book or whole passage. If it's just one paragraph, then who is the main character? What is the main character doing or experiencing? You need verbs. Think of it as a whole sentence. The main idea has to be a whole sentence. It has to have a predicate with a verb, as well as a subject, the character, who is either experiencing or receiving an action or performing an action. And you'll get the main idea if you think of it that way. Now, I have a table of categories and members of categories. So when you go through the text English exam, there's lots and lots of definitions. Many of them you already know, but maybe you're not completely clear on what they mean. Maybe you're not sure how many types there are in a particular category. So this is just to review and fill in the gaps. So, for example, text types. Well, text types is the same thing as essay types, so don't get confused about that. There are four. The four are expository, persuasive, descriptive, narrative. Text feature. When I say text feature, what comes to mind? It's a little confusing and vague to me when I see the words text feature. Here's an example of a text feature, all except, and you'll be like A, B, C, D, and you've got to circle the one that's not a text feature. You'll only get through that question if you really know what text feature is and what is it? It's a category with a list of types. On a page, a text feature would be something that draws special attention to certain words. On a page, a text feature is bold print, captions, which is a sentence that's written right underneath a text box, or a picture, or a drawing, or a diagram, and it describes what's in that diagram, drawing, or table. Italic print. You see in italic print, it's slanted, wavy print. It's meant to draw your attention to those specific words. Bullet points. Bullet points is when you have a list of points and there's a dot right before you get to it, right in the middle. I've got printouts that I'll show you of examples for all of these text features. Another example would be a fact box or a sidebar box on a web page that has extra information in it, or even a map is a text feature for a page. For a whole book, text features are something a little different. Title page, table of contents, index. An index is at the back, and it'll be like a list of subjects and which page you can find the subject on. Glossary, typically at the back, it's a list of unusual words you probably don't know, which are used in the book, and their meanings. It's like a miniature dictionary that works just for that one book. Headings. Headings are like chapter headings, subchapter headings. They tell you, they're basically topic sentences. If it's fiction, it might be a little cryptic. But if it's nonfiction, the headings will definitely help guide you through the topics. They are like topic sentences. Okay, so that's what text features are. Makes sense, easy to understand, but if you're not told, you won't be able to guess. Sentence types, there are 4. Declare, which is just say it. Imperative, telling people to do it. Exclamatory, full of emotion. Interrogative, asking a question. Forms of poetry, 4 types. And again, at grade 3, they don't expect you to know or define or distinguish these different 4 types of poetry. They want you to know the names of the 4 types of poetry. I do have a nice chart, and I will show you what are some of the characteristics for each of the 4 types of poetry. But right now, let's just name them. Narrative. Guess what kind of poetry that is. It's a story. Lyrical. Humorous. Humorous means it's got jokes in it. And free verse. Free verse is where it doesn't necessarily have to rhyme. Free verse poems, they look a little bit strange. I have examples. They do show up on 3rd grade exams. And I have examples of free verse poems and the kind of questions that are asked about them on exams. Lyrical poetry is the typical standard normal kind of poetry that you see every day. Okay. So lyrical poetry has a regular rhyming pattern to it. And songs are, the lyrics in songs are, and this is why it's called lyrical. Lyrics in songs will have this kind of poetry with lots of rhymes, and meter, which is the distance between the lines, because it has to match the notes in the song, and it has to have a really clear, even repeating pattern for the music to sound pleasant. So that's why it's called lyrical poetry, poetry that will work for songs. Now, summaries of texts. Okay, there's 2 kinds of summaries for texts. The main idea, which is for that specific text, and the theme, which is the general takeaway message that never names the specific character and gives you a moral guidance, how to avoid trouble with good behavior, and warnings about not getting into trouble with bad behavior. The more you hear it, the easier it'll be to just commit it to memory and never be stuck with, oh, what does theme mean? Can't remember. Okay, now, text genre. Genre is a weird word. It's directly taken from French, Genre. It is pronounced genre, which is actually a French sound. Like, the sound doesn't exist in English, so in English we just use a J and say genre. It's not quite right if you say genre, but it's close enough. So a genre in French literally means type of. So I don't know why in the world of English and literature studies the word genre is used instead of the word type, but it's used exactly the same way. Text genre, or genres, are text types. And you think, well, we've just covered text types. They're expository, persuasive, descriptive, and narrative. Ah, that's right. Now we know why we're using the word genre. It's a different kind of type. Text genre does not mean the same thing as text types. because the word types is already being used for something. Text genre means, well, here's the members of the category. Biography, autobiography, science fiction, fantasy, folk tales, mystery, poetry, and drama. Drama is dialogues for plays on a stage. So when you hear text genre, it's like the categories that you see in the library. They usually separate fiction, nonfiction, science fiction, and biographies. They're all on different shelves. This is typically the layout for public libraries. So when you think about text genre, remember that. Okay. Literary text types. Literary text types. Now this is confusing because text types or essay types are expository, persuasive, descriptive, and narrative. But text types of literature, this is really subtle. Nonfiction, fiction, culture and history, folklore, media, which means magazines, websites, billboards, advertising, poetry and sensory writing, which is descriptive essays. So those are another set of categories for literature. So they have this in the text. It's a little confusing. You'll need to revisit it a few times and make sure that if you see the word genre, it means those sections in the library: biography, science fiction, mystery, poetry, drama. I'm not sure that the literary text types distinction is going to be that easy to remember. I don't think there's going to be a lot of questions that say, which of these is an example of a literary text type? But you will probably see something that says, which here is an example of a genre? Autobiography, science fiction, mystery, or persuasive. And then you'll know persuasive is not a member of the category text genre. Persuasive is in the category text types. This literally will come up as a question on your essay, and you're going to get the point. All right, now, folklore. Okay, so folklore is the really big category on the outside. It includes folk tales, which are stories, and it includes superstitions. It includes holiday traditions, like decorating a Christmas tree, Easter egg hunts, trick-or-treating at Halloween. Those are examples of our modern folklore for holiday traditions. And then as far as the traditional folk tales, the really big groups that we have today that children learn are Aesop's fables. Aesop is an ancient Greek writer, and he also collected a lot of stories. He collected a huge, maybe 500 stories, and about 100 of them are known today. And there are ones like the crow who dropped pebbles into a jar that only had half a container of water to make the water level rise, and that's about being inventive and finding ways to solve your own problem. Aesop's fables, and then there are Panchantra stories in India, some of which are actually Aesop's fables. The Aesop's fables, the book, made its way to India, and some of the Panchantra stories made their way to Greece. There was some exchange there, so there's a little bit of overlap. The Indian stories and all of these myths and fables will have a pearl of wisdom. That's a big thing. The stories are for children. They're very short stories, and they're meant to provide a sensory detail, mood, emotion-evoking way to remember a handy tip about character traits and the benefits of good character traits and the disadvantages or dangers of bad character traits. Like, if you're a rabbit and you want to win the race against a tortoise, don't give in to your bad character trait of being lazy, because you'll lose the race. All right. So folklore, there basically are 5 types of folk tales. And you might be asked a question like, all of these except one is an example of a folk tale. Okay, the 5 types are fables, yes, myths, legends, tall tales. Tall tales are exaggerated stories that does not like I was telling you about the Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon and Washington. In local towns, people like to tell the tall tale that there are hairy transition species between apes and humans, and they're living in the mountains in Oregon. It's a tall tale. Like I was saying to you before, that transition species in between apes and humans never ever made it to North America. There's a land bridge between Asia and Alaska, and it required an ice age, and the ice age was 10,000 years ago, and this transition species existed probably 200,000 years ago. So it's definitely a tall tale, not true. Did I get through the list of 5? Let's try again. Okay. You've got your fables, which always involve a talking animal, myths, legends, tall tales, and fairy tales. Okay.